Hello, everyone. This is Kim Lay, and this is part two, the answer to the question that you often ask, which is, as a public company for the first time, I'm a fintech company, emerging growth company status, what's absolutely required? So part one discussed the general types of planning activities from planning risk assessments to SOC ones and key reports and so forth. This one now narrows down to the specific processes. And for most companies, there are about 10 processes that you will have to document or assess. And what I've done on here is you can now see the rows. There is one for assessing your control gaps. There is also documenting your processes and your controls. There's creating the risk control matrix, or we often call it RCM is a shorthand. Conducting our walkthroughs to assess the design of the control, and testing effectiveness. So this is test of effectiveness. Here are the basic processes that every company typically would have, and depending on your operation, it may go deeper. So entity level controls, that's very important to have. Entity level controls set the tone for the organization. It's the policies, it's the procedures, it's overall encompassing, and think of it as the umbrella under which everything operates. And as a SOX 404A, you will have to assess your control gaps. You typically create a RCM. There's not a narrative. Sometimes we write narratives, but the shorthand of it is we don't do flow charts. We will create the RCM. And it's recommended that you do a walkthrough to really understand what people are doing, because sometimes what people tell you they're doing is very different than what they are doing. And testing is optional for all these processes. Next is the equity stock administration process. Again, typically flow charts are narratives to document your process. Historically, a lot of companies have been doing narratives. Within the last 2 to 4 years, I've seen a huge shift, particularly in the last 2 years, a huge shift for external auditors, particularly Big Four external auditors, to request flowcharts. And part of that is because the PCAOB has requested more or has asked for more of that, to see swim lanes, flow charts with swim lanes, segregation of duties, identifying the flow of transactions. There is a separate video that we will do for each of these processes to show you what examples of flow charts look like. So the next process is the financial close and reporting. Sometimes people also call it financial statement close and reporting, also called report to record. And again, flowcharts, having flowcharts, creating the RCMs, and it's recommended to do a walkthrough, but not necessary. And then again, no testing needed. Other processes, fixed assets, and oftentimes included in there, we include capitalized internal use software as well. And that's your construction in progress, and look for a separate video on that. Your HR and your payroll process is another key one that is you should expect to document and assess controls. Your order to cash or the revenue cycle, your procure to pay or your expenditure cycle, your treasury, which is actually somewhat linked to your procure to pay, but treasury in this case includes debt compliance, also investments. Some companies actually actively go out and look for investments for acquisitions or investment from a cost basis investment. And then taxes is another process. And the other one, the final one, which is fairly big, and we really recommend our clients get started on it, is IT general controls. If you are working with Deloitte, sometimes it's called general IT controls, GITC instead, but it's general IT general controls. And IT general controls actually breaks down into 4 processes. There's the access to systems and programs, there's change management, system development controls, and computer operations. So those are the areas, and here for a 404A compliance, again, recommended to do walkthroughs, not required, and you're not required to do testing. And that's it. Thanks so much for joining me.